Something that has kept Elden Ring so captivating to me are all of the little hidden details that invite the player to infer just what type of world it is that they find themselves in the middle of. Details that are often so small that they're easy to miss, but that actually have really large implications in terms of world building. And I think the weird enemy details that I want to cover today certainly fit that bill. I welcome you, Tarnished, to join me, Zayf the Scholar, as I discuss some obscure details you probably missed, and explain how they exemplify Queen Marika's brutality. Let's talk about it. So these enemies, referred to officially as Flame Chariots, should be familiar to you from the base game, and be even fresher in your memory if you played through the Nightreign network test, where they sometimes showed up as mini-bosses. In fact, according to this fun infographic released by FromSoft recently, players killed over 160,000 of these guys during the network test. But despite me killing these guys hundreds of times by now, I somehow never noticed something. Their eyes actually follow you around as you fight them. Did you guys notice this? This was brought to my attention by a post on Reddit that I'll link in the description, and I have to say it takes what was already a disturbing looking enemy and brings it to another level of creepiness. And it got me to really start questioning their design and why it is they look the way they do. Why are they a disembodied head? And why do they look so eerily alive? Well, for starters, we can make some immediate observations about their appearance. Despite at first glance looking like sentient monsters, these guys, as their name implies, are actually literally vehicles. And if we swing around to the back, we can see that they're being piloted by these creepy guys. The flames the chariots emit are powered by these moving bellows on the side that pump oil out from a tank that's stored within its skull. So when you land a visceral attack from above on this vent on the top of their head, you're actually rupturing its oil tank, which is why we can see this blood-like substance erupt from its head right before it explodes into a pile of shrapnel and eyeballs. In this official concept art released by FromSoft, we can get further insight into their internals and how they envision this system actually functioning. And we can additionally find some of these ruined flame chariots in a field in Liurnia, and get an even better look at their internal mechanisms and piping fully modeled in 3D. But the moving eyeballs got me wondering, could these things actually be biomechanical rather than purely machine? Well, we learn from a merchant note that these chariots are not just any old faces, but rather bear the faces of the fire giants. And we of course know that in order to establish her Age of the Erdtree, Queen Marika together with Godfrey fought a brutal war against the fire giants, leaving all but one slain. So is it possible that the heads of defeated giants were actually used to make these disturbing chariots? Do their eyes move because they're still alive in there to some degree, being used against their will? Their pain expressions certainly give off "I have no mouth and I must scream" vibes. And they certainly wouldn't be the only enemies in Elden Ring that seem simultaneously both machine and organic. The abductor virgins, for instance, are largely mechanical, but upon closer inspection are actually filled with flesh, blood, and snakes. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on that. But even more relevant here, I think, are the trolls, the descendants of the giants we see throughout the game, who betrayed their giant brethren and sided with Marika, and doomed themselves to their current roles as Marika's slaves. As covered by Zuli the Witch in this video in the card, the trolls have had their innards removed to make space for these odd stone-like objects that serve as attachment points for the chains used to haul these carriages around the lands between. So essentially, Marika has changed the trolls into a constantly traveling reminder that the giants were not only defeated, but their descendants reduced to living machines under her control. So it wouldn't be out of character for her to use actual giant heads to make some flame chariots, is all I'm saying. It would certainly be a great way to send the message that not only had Marika brutally defeated the giants, but that their power wasn't something she feared, but rather something that she could bend to her will. But that being said, Despite reading several comments stating that we can find headless giant corpses among the ones in the mountaintops of the giants, I was unable to locate any for myself. Do let me know in the comments if you can help me find any though, because that would make this theory even more plausible. In any case though, it's also worth noting that whether or not actual decapitated giant heads were part of the crafting process for these flame chariots, it certainly seems fair to conclude that they appear to be cast in tarnished bronze. A material that gained new significance in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, where it's referred to as verdigris. The verdigris set states, verdigris is said to be the gift of an outer god, possessed of an enormously hefty yet supple strength thanks to its rusted nature. The last remaining fire giant that we fight in the base game also appears to wield a disc of this same material, and thus it seems fair to speculate that the outer god being referenced here is the fell god of the giants. So again, what better way to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies than to show up to battle with what look like the living heads of your previous foes that have had their terrified expressions horribly immortalized in the very material that was gifted to them by their god. That's pretty damn metal, literally speaking. And I speculate that's exactly what Marika did during the Liurnian Wars that followed her war with the giants, which is why in Liurnia Highway North we find that field I mentioned earlier, strewn with ruined flame chariots side by side fallen marionettes of Raya Lucaria. Marika wanted to immediately make clear in this battle that this is the fate awaiting those who resist her. And this perhaps had an even more twisted aspect when you consider the fact that some of the giants' descendants, the trolls, fought for the Carians instead of Marika. Showing up to a battle with weapons that look like someone's dead ancestors is pretty messed up, to put it lightly. One last piece of evidence that could help tie all of these ideas together a bit is the description of the Visage Shield, which bears the same face as the Flame Chariots. Its description reads, "The dreadful visage and burning flames are designed to remind one of the horror of facing a fire giant." In other words, this shield has an instructional function. I think that this description solidifies that these dreadful depictions of the fallen giants are meant to remind people not only of how terrifying the giants themselves were, but also by extension of Marika's successful campaign against them. And in fact, if we look closely at the foreheads of the chariots, we can see that they appear to have been branded or inscribed with marks that strongly resemble Marika's rune. And thus I think the lesson to be taken away by viewing these once terrifying beings reduced to their current selves is don't mess with Queen Marika. Zayf in post here. Something that I somehow overlooked when writing this script is that there's actually another enemy that fits nicely into this discussion, the furnace golems from the DLC. These guys also bear the face of a fell god, who's apparently said to have a history with the hornsent. The description of the furnace visage reads, "A stone mask surrounded by curled horns depicting the fell god of fire that haunts the sagas of the hornsent." I'm honestly not entirely sure what to make of it yet, but it's pretty interesting to consider that this fell god was a figure that struck fear into the hornsent people, and that Messmer and Marika sought to exploit this fear with this design. Perhaps even more relevant to our discussion, though, is the fact that the furnace golems are decorated with the decapitated heads of fire giants, which we can see adorning their legs. So there's definitely precedent for Marika's forces using giant heads for crafting weapons of war that I think fits nicely into all the other evidence I presented. But with that being said, I'm honestly not sure if this fell god and the one-eyed fell god from the base game are meant to refer to the same entity, since this one is clearly depicted with 2 eyes. But what do you guys think? Do these ideas make sense to you? Do the Chariots' eyes move because they're alive in there? Or are there some other forces at play? Are there multiple fell gods, or just one? As always, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. In any case, I hope I brought some interesting and easy-to-miss details to the table for you guys to further investigate. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. It really helps out my channel a lot, and I genuinely appreciate it. And hey, I'd also appreciate it if you considered supporting my work by becoming a patron, a YouTube member, or buying me a coffee. On that note, I'd like to extend a special shout out to Lord's Rune level member Roman. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.